let us begin our study of the Tao Te Ching. Today we're in chapters 25 through 28. Thanks for coming to join us. We'll get to prayer requests at the end this time. Okay, ladies? So again, I am reading from the Stephen Mitchell translation, and then we will pour over a couple other translations as well. Chapter 25. There was something formless and perfect before the universe was born. It is serene, empty, solitary, unchanging, infinite, eternally present. It is the mother of the universe. For lack of a better name, I call it the Tao. It flows through all things, inside and outside, and returns to the origin of all things. The Tao is great. The universe is great. Earth is great. Man is great. These are the four great powers. Man follows the earth. Earth follows the universe. The universe follows the Tao. The Tao follows only itself. Chapter 26. The heavy is the root of the light. The unmoved is the source of all movement. Thus, the master travels all day without leaving home. However splendid the views, she stays serenely in herself. Why should the lord of the country flit about like a fool? If you let yourself be blown to and fro, you lose touch with your root. If you let restlessness move you, you lose touch with who you are. Chapter 27. A good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent upon arriving. A good artist lets his intuition lead him wherever it wants. A good scientist has freed himself of concepts and keeps his mind open to what is. Thus, the master is available to all people and doesn't reject anyone. He is ready to use all situations and doesn't waste anything. This is called embodying the light. What is a good man but a bad man's teacher? What is a bad man but a good man's job? If you don't understand this, you will get lost, however intelligent you are. It is the great secret. And finally, chapter 28. Know the male, yet keep to the female. Receive the world in your arms. If you receive the world, the Tao will never leave you, and you will be like a little child. Know the white, yet keep to the black. Be a pattern for the world. If you are a pattern for the world, the Tao will be strong inside you, and there will be nothing you can't do. Know the personal, yet keep to the impersonal. Accept the world as it is. If you accept the world, the Tao will be luminous inside you, and you will return to your primal self. The world is formed from the void, like utensils from a block of wood. The master knows the utensils, yet keeps to the block. Thus, she can use all things. Okay. So starting out in chapter 25, what we're going to do is we're going to go through and read the black text, which is from the Tao Te Ching, annotated and explained by Derek Lin. Then we will go over to the annotations on the next page, come back and read the Sam Toro translation. There is something formlessly created, born before heaven and earth, so silent, so ethereal, independent and changeless, circulating and ceaseless. It can be regarded as the mother of the world. I do not know its name. Identifying it, I call it Tao. Forced to describe it, I call it great. Great means passing. Passing means receding. Receding means returning. Therefore, the Tao is great. Heaven is great. Earth is great. The sovereign is also great. There are four greats in the universe, and the sovereign occupies one of them. Humans follow the laws of earth. Earth follows the laws of heaven. Heaven follows the laws of Tao. Tao follows the laws of nature. So this one's a little bit different. So we say that the Tao was born before heaven and earth because the principles that allowed for universal creation are aspects of the Tao. Whether creation is the result of divine will or the interaction of natural forces, it has to follow a certain set of rules. Therefore, the Tao had to exist before anything else. The very fact that we exist is proof that the Tao must also exist. The paragraph you are reading now expresses an idea. That expression would not be possible without grammatical rules. Similarly, our existence is the physical expression written in the universal language of the Tao. So, the principles that allowed for universal creation are aspects of the Tao. Stay with me here. Tao is merely a name, really nothing more than a label. Ancient sages readily admitted that they knew little about it, but they could see that its function manifested in circular patterns everywhere, from a spherical raindrop to the majestic sweep of galaxies. So I just want to show you some of these images that I pulled off the internet to give you an example. This is fractals. So these tiny, tiny things go on and on and on and on forever in these same kinds of patterns. And these occur all over the place. As you can see here, a beautiful Fibonacci spiral, that outward spiraling. Look at that. As we grow, we spiral outward. There's a hurricane, galaxy, pine cones, pineapples, dandelions, cabbage, roses. We see it everywhere, this spiraling circular kind of pattern. So thought that was kind of interesting.
I'm surprised you don't have DNA on there with the
Um,
spiral.
yeah, very true. See? Okay, annotation number 3. The sovereign is a natural leader who is congruent with the Tao. Such leaders can serve as examples for the people at any level of society. The sovereign can also mean you if you recognize your birthright to have absolute power over your life. As the owner of your destiny, you can direct it in any way you see fit. All you need is the realization and the willingness to aspire to greatness. So I want to say that again. If you recognize your birthright to have absolute power over your life, it is your birthright to control your own destiny. That's an interesting concept. How do you guys feel about that with regards to free will or the lack thereof? How do you feel this idea of having absolute power to control your destiny? How do you feel that either supports or negates the idea of free will or the lack thereof, predestination?
Well, I feel like we have both. I do feel like we have choices. Interestingly enough, and I believe I sent it to you, palmistry. Our left hand shows us what is essentially like predetermined,
Mm-hmm.
and our right hand will show all the changes in life.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty fascinating in and of itself. But I do feel like um, we do have some free will, but if we make soul contracts in that sense, it is also predetermined. But
Mm.
whether or not we stay on that predetermined path, I think is where the free will kind of falls into place there.
Yeah. Do you believe that we have absolute power over our own lives?
I believe we have absolute power over ourselves, not perhaps our outside circumstances, but then again, that's something that I kind of have battled with a little bit in my thoughts, because if our internal reflects our external,
Mm.
what is that? Where does the rest of the world fall into place there with all the other chaos that's going on?
Well, I think there's that component of like that hive mind, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Collective collective consciousness makes a difference. That's why it's so important to still continue to work on helping others to shift into a different mindset, a different belief system, because I do believe that collectively it's kind of like, that the Christian concept where two or more are gathered in my name, there I am also. Like where we are collectively focusing our attention and our energy, we will see results quickly, more quickly than we would if we were on our own. And this is why those meditation and those prayer experience are so effective. Every time they do one of these experiments, they're so effective at reducing crime rates, at curing disease. So the collective consciousness we do have to be aware of, that's like, it's like the other part, the counterbalance to our understanding of self. We need to know ourselves, know everything about us inside and out, because then we can get a better understanding of other people and of the collective, and how to utilize our strengths and our weaknesses to influence the collective in a positive direction.
I would agree with that. Funny enough, the power of prayer and meditation came up yesterday in conversation. The exact thing of the crime rate going down.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I do agree with that, and the perspectives to be able to have. But then to answer your question, do I feel like we have then, um, I am you and you are me, and we are all one. Um, I guess if we were able to get everybody on the same page, then yes. But because there's so many different fragments, like light, that we were just talking about, um, it makes sense of why the external is what it is. We haven't come together as one. So therefore, is it possible to have that full control? Sure. But is it possible in the state that we're in right now? I don't think so. Only because I do also believe that, based on our conversation that we've had previously, that we are post-apocalyptic. So all these things that were there to help us, help our light being selves, have been taken away. And the part of our brain that has access to that knowledge that most people are unaware that we even have, uh, is intentionally, especially with all the frequencies and everything going on, intentionally try to be turned off, because they don't want. If we could control, if we have that full capability of our brains, then it would be possible, I think, to live in that higher frequency of that freedom and happiness and authenticity. But it's controlled in the side of the brain. Is it the right side? I can't quite remember.
I forget
If
which side's which.
it's this one, baby. If we were able to access that, I don't think that people would be able to be so easily swayed and controlled by fear. So I think it would be way more attainable.
Yeah. Yeah, that fear is a kicker, isn't it? It's funny because apparently, according to Marley's forecast for the week, We're going to be seeing a lot of stiffness and pain in the lower back and lower extremities because of our willingness to hold on to fear. And she said it was pretty well evident from the whole October 4th thing. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what new spiral of growth we're all going to go through in regards to releasing fear. I have a
Well,
feeling.
I'm certainly trying to help with that with those one trapped emotion a day. If I haven't reached fear yet though. But we have reached terror.
Okay.
So I mean, we'll get there. And
Yeah.
especially with everybody who's on there also doing Reiki sessions as well. There are a lot of collective people who are working towards awakening everybody else. Persistence.
Mm. All right. So we're going to look at annotation number 4 now. The cosmos is an orchestrated symphony on many levels. On Earth, human beings follow the laws of the land in which they live. The Earth itself follows the laws of astronomy, the rules that govern the motions of heavenly bodies. The universe as a whole follows the patterns of the Tao at the macroscopic level. Ultimately, the Tao itself follows natural laws, which arise from the Tao process, thus underscoring the self-completeness of the Tao. So I really was fascinated by this self-completeness. The Tao is self-complete. It has everything it needs. It's not lacking anything. Okay. Now, my thought here was, okay, so if we are the Tao and the Tao is us, then the Tao is everything, and nothing can exist outside of the Tao, then everything is complete within it. If the Tao is complete and we are the Tao, then we are complete. Do you follow? Yes.
I'm following. I'm sorry, I
Right?
had to jump back in here.
No, you're good. Right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but that's how I feel. Like if everything is one with the Tao, then everything is complete in the Tao. The Tao itself is self-complete, then we are also complete.
It makes sense to me. I mean, that's why so many people on earth that have nothing are happier than those who still want.
Mm,
You know, they're complete in their happiness. They have everything that they need within themselves,
mm,
Well, that
even
makes
with
sense
little
of what you
outside
said about
themselves.
Buddha.
yeah. Well,
Don't touch.
well, not only that, but if you look at it in terms of that thing that you were showing us earlier with desire and pride, knowing that we are complete, then we desire nothing. And knowing that we are complete means we don't have to compete with anyone. So there's no need for pride, right?
Or ego.
Exactly.
Yep.
Very interesting stuff. I find this fascinating. So, because you are one with the Tao and because you are self-complete, you can have anything that you feel you need for your existence without a whole lot of effort because it's your birthright. Not to say that you won't have to put in some grit and some work. You may, but that's that aspiration of greatness, right? All you need is the realization and the willingness to aspire to greatness. If you already know you have everything you need, then anything you do will work out ultimately.
So I don't mean to back up here. I couldn't chime in when we were talking about free will
No,
versus
go ahead.
destiny. And my thoughts on it is that they coexist together, that the choices that we make, you know, lead us to where we need to be. So essentially, it is fate. I feel like they coexist, like they're
Mhm.
almost one and the same almost.
Well, that makes a lot of sense when you think about it in terms of these fractal kind of patterns, because in order for a circular motion, so we just learned this in our science a few weeks ago, circular motion requires two things. It requires this momentum and also a forward movement, because generally anything works in a forward movement, but because there's a point keeping it stuck to a fixed length, that's what keeps it spinning around. So there's this solidity to it that is unmoving, and yet the only way you can get the circular motion is to have that momentum around that constant point. It's the binary, it's the one and the zero, it's the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine.
So
It's
what you're essentially saying is the Tao is that point in the middle.
well, no,
That's not change, or is it the ebb and flow in the
the
circular pattern?
the Tao is the stillness and the motion.
Okay, it's everything. Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And any manifestation that comes out of that. It's a beautiful marriage. It still seems very much like in my mind and my, minuscule human understanding, I'm still looking at it as Sky Daddy and Sky Mommy, basically, um, the great mother and father, and one
It's
can't
the
exist without
masculine
the
and
other.
feminine energy.
Yeah. Well, because
Yep.
one, the masculine energy is action, it's movement. So that's that spinning. And then a feminine energy is the stillness, the
Separate.
receptivity.
Yeah.
And that's that center point.
Oh gosh.
What?
Do you think that's why women have taken on these roles of go, 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 and I could take on everything? We're supposed to be still. How is
Yeah,
that conflicting to our feminine side?
that's the whole thing. That was why there was a huge push to get women out into the workforce. That was intentional. Yeah.
Do you think that's why females can have babies? Because they encompass both energies?
Well, I think that generally speaking, females are receptive. We are vessels. Think of it like you're a cup or a bowl, right? Whatever you receive to you, generally, you do embody a sort of masculine energy in that you create something with it and you express it outwardly. If someone gives you ingredients and you give them a cake, then that's a similar kind of thing to being a mother. I mean,
Right.
rudimentary, but still, we as beings by nature will receive something and then express it amplified or magnified in some way. I mean, look, this even happens within us.
Yep, that's what I'm saying. Females are awesome. Just saying.
We love you though, Billy.
Yes, Billy, you rock too.
All
We
right.
need both. We need both. Once
Yes.
everybody really comes together, I think we will absolutely have that balance.
Mhm. Yeah, well, and that's the thing now. I think that so many women have come online over the last few years that it's needed in order to tip the scales away from this radical feminist agenda and put it back towards healing the divine masculine and the men of the world. Because there's a lot of work that needs to be done there.
Well, everything is imbalanced right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
very much.
everything.
Very much. For so many men to want to be women and women want to be men, that's it, you can tell it's out of balance.
Well, and what Katie was saying earlier with the genetic manipulation, if we think this is the first of it, we're insane.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
something that could have been done long before we ever thought it was even possible.
They've been genetically modifying each and every one of us since we came out of our mothers because they change our food, they change our water, they change our air, they bombard us with frequencies. We're always being genetically modified.
Yes.
It's nothing new.
You want to hear something wild though?
Oh,
So, one of the ladies that I had a reading from, she was saying that if you look in the Lemurian text and all of those ancient civilizations, that they were doing it way
Mhm.
back then too.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I've been super interested in the Lemurians
Yeah.
like for months now. Yeah.
It's hard to find
Dive
information
into
on
it.
them.
Yeah, that's true too.
Very hard. All right, so let's read back through chapter 25 in the Sam Toro translation. There is being that encompasses all, and it existed before earth or the universe. Calm, indeed, and immaterial. It is singular and changeless. All creation flows from it and returns to it. It is the world's mother. I cannot define it, but I will call it Tao. If forced to describe it, I will call it great. The great is evasive. The evasive is distant. The distant is ever coming near. The Tao is great. So is the universe great. So is Earth, and so is humanity. Humanity is the child of Earth. Earth is the child of the universe. The universe is the child of the Tao. The Tao has no mother, but is the mother of all. Okay, and we already read this one at the beginning, the Stephen Mitchell translation. Did you guys want me to read that again, or can we move on to the next one?
I say skip it and move on.
All right, now we are in a chapter about self-mastery. Heaviness is the root of lightness. Quietness is the master of restlessness. Therefore, the sages travel the entire day without leaving the heavy supplies. Even though there are luxurious sights, they are composed and transcend beyond. How can the lords of 10,000 chariots apply themselves lightly to the world? To be light is to lose one's root. To be restless is to lose one's mastery. So this is kind of a lack of self-discipline. Okay. Heaviness here refers to the quality of gravitas in human affairs. Although Tao sages possess a gentle sense of humor, they are able to approach a situation with the appropriate degree of seriousness when necessary. This attribute is often associated with deliberation and dignity. Lightness is the opposite, a frivolous disregard for the matter at hand. In this context, it is often associated with restlessness and carelessness. Okay, so taking a matter lightly would not be good. Travel here refers to the journey of life, and the heavy supplies are the essentials, the most important stuff, the basics. Sages are the ones who traverse through life without ever losing track of the fundamental essence that makes us human. Although there are many tempting sights of luxuries, the illusions of the material world that would distract us from the real goal, the sages remain unmoved. And then 10,000 chariots is a metaphor for great responsibility in life. When we encounter a great responsibility, whether it's an important project at work or starting a family or anything else, we need to approach it with somber attitude and firm footing. Those who treat it lightly will be easily distracted and uprooted by the winds of adversity. So I got some questions. So the overarching question here is, what is self-mastery? I don't really want an answer for that right at the moment, but the 10,000 chariots reference made me think of this, and I'm sure that you ladies are aware of what that is. Lucky number 7. But this is the card of self-mastery. Okay. And these questions are some that I feel would help us kind of get a better understanding of what self mastery is. So it says that the the sages are the ones who traverse through life without ever losing track of the fundamental essence that makes us human. So, what is the fundamental essence that makes us human?
Is that body, mind, and spirit?
Okay,
I was
probably.
going to say the same thing with the flesh. From
Okay.
everything I've been reading, it definitely has to do with the material world at the very least.
And see, I'm thinking of it from a different perspective. When I think of the word human, I'm not really thinking of so much the physical body. I'm thinking of humanity, human nature. So to me, the fundamental essence that makes us human is love, compassion, because think about it. If they're saying they want to travel through life with only the most important stuff, basics, I mean, you can get most of your physical needs met relatively easily out in the wilderness. And you have to remember this book was written in 6 BCE. So life was uh some would say simpler then, some would say more challenging then. I guess it's a matter of perspective, but they were, traveling down the road and foraging as they went, and their needs were met. So that wasn't their human essence, just having a physical body that needed to have its basic needs met. This was something different that didn't allow them to be distracted from the connection with spirit and oneness with all that they were attempting to attain. So what would that essence be then? Is it just love and compassion? Is it something else?
I don't know why. I don't really have a reasoning for my answer
Mhm.
to put into clear words for you to understand, but I feel like soul
Mm,
is the essence. I mean, even the soul has weight after it leaves the body. The
mhm,
last breath of air that we ever breathe, when it leaves us, our bodies are lighter
mhm.
after that's gone. I'm not sure. I feel like the
Okay.
essence to all of us is soul and thought and conscious, like your conscience.
Consciousness. Interesting. Okay. And see, this is one of those questions that I don't really have the answer to. It's just I wanted to be able to kind of explore it together because I want to hear what your thoughts are. Katie, do you have any thoughts on what the fundamental essence is that makes us human beyond our physical body?
Well, I mean, do other beings of light experience emotions? Is it emotions that set us apart? Because it's emotions that we have to learn to control in our human experience.
Okay, that's an
Cool.
interesting
Cool.
perspective too.
And we were talking before the study how animals can sense things. So let's take dogs who let their owner know before they're about to have a seizure.
Mm,
Do they have a conscience? Because they can either let them know or not let them know,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So that doesn't really differ between dog and human.
Oh,
Mhm.
So
that's very true too. I mean, but we're all, especially when you go into vegan and whatnot, everything is a sentient being.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Sorry, we got lots
it's
of
a
noise
really
going on.
interesting question.
Yeah, well, and so, okay, I think it's really important though, because if we're asking the question, what is self mastery? And the sages are the ones who traverse through life without ever losing track of the fundamental essence that makes us human, then how can we possibly understand how to attain self mastery if we can't yet define the fundamental essence that makes us human?
And we were talking earlier about authenticity,
Mm.
being the ultimate. So
But
without go ahead.
no, no, you were going first. Go ahead.
I don't even know where I'm going with it. I think just saying that without fully understanding and accepting ourselves, we don't reach that point of authenticity to even know we're being authentic.
Ooh,
But how
acceptance.
can we know that if half of our brain has essentially been shut off intentionally?
Mm. Intentionally turn it back on.
In
But
silence
but if people
during
are
meditation.
unaware that it's even off, I mean,
Yeah.
okay, for example, I know going to public school, the biggest thing, one of the things that always frustrated me was like, oh, you got to think outside the box, and we only use what 10% of our brain. I think that's all ridiculous. There's no box. We're the only ones who are self-limiting. And the whole point of the box is they already put us in a box that they keep saying that. And if we only think we use 10% of our brain, well, that's limiting in itself too. So how can we truly know what we are capable of or to even turn it on if we've already have these limiting beliefs that are constructing what our reality is? Because if we are the Tao and of the Tao and we are complete, how do we attain that if we know we're incomplete, or we feel incomplete, I should say? uh and most people on the healing journey are realizing that completion comes within from knowing their self authenticity and back to our creator.
So I just had a thought. What if the fundamental essence that makes us human is our concept of self? The fact that we can
Yes.
differentiate us from someone else.
Yep. And I think the way of getting there to the realization of self is by going head on with each limiting belief that
Hmm.
one has.
How would you do that? Give me an example.
Um, so if I have a limiting belief that I can't be complete without a counter, like a male in my life, a husband, if I will if I have that limiting belief that I will never be complete without a husband, that's holding myself back, you know, journeying through life um, by myself and learning to love me for who I am and realizing that I don't need anyone else to be just as happy, if not happier, than others, just battling one on one with that limiting belief to the point of overcoming it. I think
Yeah.
that's how you get closer to who you truly are.
Well, so like with that particular belief, I think I would ask myself, well, what do I feel I need that I'm somehow lacking that I need to look for it outside of myself? You know what I mean? Like,
But
okay,
Right.
I
we're
need
taught
this
that
person.
though.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're taught that, oh
Disney.
well, everybody has a soulmate out there, and you go look for that soulmate and then you become whole. Well, what if that is a limiting belief as well? What if we are just complete souls in and of itself, that we're not separate? I mean, I know there's the Native American story that talks about like a soul being complete, and then I think it was lightning separated them on different parts of the earth. But what if that is of itself a limiting belief that we need somebody else to make us complete?
Yeah. Well,
Why
and
can't we just make each other better?
but think about it though. That's like that's the whole fabric of our existence if you think about it. Most of the problems that people have with other people is because those other people didn't live up to some sort of expectation or feel some sort of need for the person that has the problem with them in the first place.
Well, that's why when someone's judging somebody, they have to look within themselves as to why they're judging in the first place, because that person's not living up to their expectations, which are very different than the other person's expectations.
Mhm.
And really, expectations are the thing that's limiting us the most.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what this has been teaching us. This idea of self-mastery is releasing the need to have any expectation or judgment about it at all. Do we really need to choose a side, or can we sit somewhere in the middle and allow the option to present itself? Do
But
we
I think,
have to strive in one direction or the other?
well, I think that's what also this world also creates is that duality. And we're finding that that duality actually just creates that resistance. As above, so below. But if we're in the middle, we see from all those perspectives. We see the above and we see the below.
And
Having
that's being receptive, right? Look, I
Right.
mean,
Even,
look at what's in
even
the middle there.
oh,
See
look at
what's in
that.
the center,
Hmm.
right? We need that duality. We need that ability to be in motion and in rest. We need the ability to go between darkness and light. But somewhere in the middle is where we're able to see a 360-degree view,
So
right?
in that book that I was showing you at the beginning, that chart, it has neutrality listed in the 4D reality self as mind, in the
Mhm.
self-empowered mentality. So unity is actually in the 5D reality above that, self as spirit with the freedom, happiness, love, and inner peace. But
Mhm.
even just being neutral in the duality is still in the 4D, it's still under that.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about this visual. He has these two kind of warring factions under his control. He's not necessarily swayed in one direction or the other because he's got it unified. He's figured it out. He's figured out the balance. So,
It's funny because those wings in the middle, the
mhm,
blue wings, they
mhm,
remind me so much of my aunt, which is
mhm,
all about balance and karmic and justice and all of that.
mhm.
That's what, whenever I see wings like that, I think of my aunt.
Well, and that was one of the things that I was thinking about with regards to the concept of body, mind, and spirit. Balance, we typically think of either side, right? Oh, the dark and the light. But we forget that there's a third point, and that's the point in the center. And that makes up the Trinity. You know what I mean? Like yes, there's two sides to every story, but then there's also the point in the middle that sees both sides equally. So we have to maintain being, the center of the dreidel, the center of the spiral, that anchored point that everything else spins around.
objective consciousness.
Yes. How
So
challenging.
that takes us back then to the essence,
Yeah.
that objective consciousness.
Mhm.
Yes.
Which will refuse to acknowledge self at some point. I would say to have an objective conscience, you can't necessarily be judging something based on some sort of preconceived merit that you have as to whether or not it would be good or bad for you.
Right.
Make sense?
I agree.
Okay. I mean, we're on a roll today. I love it. It's a great discussion. All right, chapter 27. We're in hidden values now. And actually, hold on a second. I just want to make sure that I went back. No, I didn't. My apologies. So I have this here. Keep calm and carry on. This was actually something that they distributed, I believe it was in the 1930s around Britain. It's an actual thing, but they weren't really, no one really remembered it because they didn't distribute them as widely as they had planned. And someone found some obscure copy in a bookstore in 2000, and it became a big thing. That's why you see it all over the internet now.
Yep, I was going to say it's a big meme that started
Yeah.
up, and yeah.
Yeah, it was actually propaganda shortly after uh, World War One, I think, right before World War Two, something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, look it up. Keep calm and carry on. You'd be surprised. All right, self-mastery. The light overcomes the heavy, the still overcomes the frantic. The wise never forget their dignity. Though surrounded by dazzling sights, they remain calm and unmoved. How did it happen that the emperor, master of 10,000 chariots, lost control of his empire? Being flippant himself, he lost the respect of his subjects. Failing to control himself, he lost the control of the empire. So, because he couldn't control himself, he lost control of his entire empire. That is a sobering reality there. I'm not going to read the entire chapter 26 because we read this in the beginning, but this last part, it hooked me. If you let restlessness move you, you lose touch with who you are. Think about it. You're going about your day and you're just kind of vibing, and someone kind of throws a wrench in your day, and you have a choice. You have a choice to respond positively, negatively, or not at all. And your choice kind of determines your authentic expression of self. Generally speaking, are you someone who would get bothered by that or upset? Or are you letting it take you outside of yourself? Something to keep in mind. All right, chapter 27. Good traveling does not leave tracks. Good speech does not seek faults. Good reckoning does not use counters. Good closure needs no bar and yet cannot be opened. Good knot needs no rope and yet cannot be untied. Therefore, sages often save others, and so do not abandon anyone. They often save things, and so do not abandon anything. This is called following enlightenment. Therefore, the good person is the teacher of the bad person. The bad person is the resource of the good person. Those who do not value their teachers and do not love their resources, although intelligent, they are greatly confused. This is called the essential wonder. Okay. So, annotation number 1, skilled travelers in the journey of life follow the path of nature. They do not force their way through obstacles or trample over fellow travelers. They leave no signs of their passing. If we are similarly skillful in personal interactions, we would also follow the path of nature and not use words to find fault in others. To do so would be to leave unskillful skid marks all over the emotional landscape. Yowza. Let me say that again. If we are similarly skillful in personal interactions, we would also follow the path of nature and not use words to find fault in others. Guilty. Okay. Number 2. In ancient China, doors were locked from the inside with a wooden bar set horizontally. Thus, this line is talking about how we can capture people's attention so they naturally gravitate to us as if they are locked in, but without the wooden bar. The key is to connect with them at a deep level and form bonds that are stronger than any knots tied with ropes. So, connection, human connection, so important. Number 3, sages do not give up on anyone. Everyone plays a role, and everyone has an impact. Good individuals can serve as teachers and examples for us. Not so good individuals are just as useful because we can observe the consequences of their negative actions and learn what not to do. Okay, so good people and bad people can be our teachers if we let them. Number 4, this line describes the passing on of spiritual knowledge from one generation to the next. Following enlightenment means walking in the footsteps of past sages, to take their illuminating wisdom as our own. Some translators render the characters as stealing light, which strays far from the original meaning. It's interesting, though, the translation can sometimes be stealing light, walking in the footsteps of past sages. Um, Jess, would you like me to read this out loud? Okay. I'm going to continue on with number 5, and then if you'd like to read that, you can. Most of us do not value everyone equally. We develop likes and dislikes, preferences and aversions. We shower some with attention while ignoring others. We favor certain individuals while finding others barely tolerable. Many of us pay lip service to the concept of universal love, but few of us actually practice it. Lao Tzu would definitely see us as greatly confused. So, this made me think of the scripture from Luke 14. He also said to the one who had invited him, this was the parable of the feast, okay? When you make a dinner or a supper, don't call your friends, nor your brothers, nor your kinsmen, nor rich neighbors, or perhaps they might also return the favor and pay you back. But when you make a feast, ask the poor, the maimed, the lame, or the blind, and you will be blessed, because they don't have the resources to repay you. For you will be repaid in the resurrection of the righteous. So, Lao Tzu would be in agreement with Christ, I think, calling us greatly confused for not really practicing universal love. Interesting. I think one of the biggest problems that we have as a society and a culture of practicing universal love is that we don't really love ourselves all that much. And here we are back to self again. Jess, did you want to read?
So I would like you to read it because I'm not very good getting back and forth between the chat. That's why I couldn't answer you real quick because I couldn't get back to the unmute button. But I'm on my phone at work, so I apologize. So I totally agree. Number one, with what you're saying, I believe it's the ego that gets in the way of us being able to see where that love should be
Mhm,
displayed at
mhm,
that time. I feel like people are usually trying to do things for the wrong reasons without even realizing it. Maybe they're trying to share that feast with the neighborhood to be accepted more in the neighborhood or to be seen, instead of distributing it where it's needed for the right reasons and not to be seen. That's why a lot of people do things without sharing their name because they don't want to take the credit for it. That's not the reason they did it. And I
exactly.
really appreciate people like that. What I shared in the chat is just a little story that came to my mind when we were talking a little while ago. And I'm sure you guys will understand once you hear it. I just feel like this is what the book's talking about of how we should be. So if you
Okay.
wouldn't mind reading it, Jess.
Yeah, sure. Once upon a time, there was an old farmer who had worked his crops for many years. One day, his horse ran away. Upon hearing the news, his neighbors came to visit. Such bad luck, they said sympathetically. You must be so sad. We'll see, the farmer replied. The next morning, the horse returned, bringing with it 2 other wild horses. How wonderful! The neighbors exclaimed. Not only did your horse return, but you received 2 more. What great fortune you have! We'll see, answered the farmer. The following day, his son tried to ride one of the untamed horses, was thrown, and broke his leg. The neighbors again came to offer their sympathy on his misfortune. Now your son cannot help you with your farming, they said. What terrible luck you have. We'll see, replied the old farmer. The following week, military officials came to the village to conscript young men into the army. Seeing that the son's leg was broken, they passed him by. The neighbors congratulated the farmer on how well things had turned out. Such great news! You must be so happy. The man smiled to himself and said once again, We'll see.
I
Very
love
true.
that. I heard it a long time ago, and it just
Mhm.
came to my mind of how we should be that, in our mastery. We should be
Mhm.
unmoving
Mhm.
and just allow things to play out the way they will play out
Mhm.
without an opinion of how they should play out.
Yeah, those opinions, man, they're killer, aren't they? Well, so, and I love the title of this section too, Hidden Values. It's, things that we might not necessarily see in others, right? I loved this part too. Good speech does not seek faults. It reminded me of 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 5. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. That's a big one. And I know I for sure need to work on. Okay. Good hikers need no maps. Good speakers need no scripts. Good counters need no abacus. Good guards need no locks. The wise, trusting in goodness, see the potential in others, treating no one as an outcast. Trusting in goodness, they redeem all things. Nothing is worthless to them. They recognize hidden value. The wise take the lost under their wings, and so the lost become newfound treasures of the wise. Each is valuable to the other. This is the significance of spirituality. I love this part in the Stephen Mitchell translation where it says that the master is ready to use all situations and doesn't waste anything. That reminds me of Romans 8:28. All things work together for good. Seeing all situations as potentials for learning or opportunity, despite how dismal they might seem at the moment. Sometimes the fog has to lift before we can see the full expression of what's on the other side of the mountain, right? But we can't really see it until we're past that fog. So we have to be willing to trust sometimes that even when things look dark or abysmal, there's probably something surprising and unexpected and positive that most certainly will come out of it. That's my thought anyway. I tend to be a glass half full kind of gal. And maybe that's still judgment. Maybe it's not being objective to see goodness um infinitely possible, but I'll own it. Any thoughts, any questions before we move on to chapter 28? This one is called Know Yourself. Know the masculine, hold to the feminine. Be the watercourse of the world. Being the watercourse of the world, the eternal virtue does not depart. Return to the state of the infant. Know the white, hold to the black. Be the standard of the world. Being the standard of the world, the eternal virtue does not deviate. Return to the state of the boundless. Know the honor. Hold to the humility. Be the valley of the world. Being the valley of the world, the eternal virtue shall be sufficient. Return to the state of plain wood. Plain wood splits, then becomes tools. The sages utilize them and then become leaders. Thus, the greater whole is undivided. Okay.
Well, I was gonna say, because don't get me, I'm trying to feed the kids
Mm-hmm.
while cleaning and do all the things. But I think also, as we were talking about masculine and feminine, this society is generally more masculine. So to surrender and have inaction is usually not the route most people go. But within that, with surrendering, I think it's funny because the EFT tapping that came up, one of the cards said, when something doesn't work out the way that I planned, I trust that something far greater is in store for me.
Yeah.
And having that trust and that faith that something better, like it's all working out for the better. And as they say, when it feels like it's falling apart, it's really just falling apart to come together
Yeah.
better. And before, when you had mentioned, um, oh, it's a little further back, but we were talking about perspectives. And in regards to perspectives, going through the tribulations I have the past few years, the biggest thing that helped me through it was to drop those judgments and preconceived titles that we are all given, to be able to just see a human being as a human being struggling in the human experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, even though, like I said, these foggy kind of moments, the ones where things don't really seem clear and may even seem like a bit of a struggle, um, are some of our best teachers and opportunities for growth, in that they provide us the chance to be still and just trust that everything's working out. I mean, you're kind of a perfect example of that right now.
Yes, yes. That's all I've been doing is surrendering and know that everything's going to work out for the better. It's
Mhm.
just, it's the only thing that is for sure in this life is the impermanence of everything.
Yeah.
And all of us know that within these periods that we're in the thick of it, when they feel like tower moments, are the biggest periods where, as you say, the sun comes after the night, or however that saying goes. That was not how it goes, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
uh, but knowing that in our darkest moments, that there is still something better once you get through those moments. It is big monumental moments of growth that we find, even though it may not be fun in these moments. Um, you can see the beauty in it still.
Well, that's the thing
Well,
too.
sometimes.
I feel like those moments of difficulty and challenge provide us a contrast in which we can see and appreciate the blessings that we have, without having the struggle and the hardship, we may not appreciate the things we have quite as much.
Exactly. And that's why I say I got to jump into that Buddhism, where he was saying that those who are fully enlightened and essentially living in heaven,
Mhm.
when they reincarnate to hell because they happen to like lose the appreciation for those good things. Very
Mm.
interesting.
Hmm.
But it is true. You get used to when, if everything was perfect all the time, you wouldn't appreciate. I mean, I would love to say that we would, but you need the bad. Well, you can't, I don't know if you want to term it that. You got to have the opposite in order to be grateful and live in that attitude of gratitude
Yeah.
uh, for when you have things going your way. I don't want to say good or bad because it's really perception there.
Yeah,
And
that's just judgment. Mhm.
exactly. But it's good. Not everybody, but it takes rewiring of the brain, like the courses that we will be creating and in the process of creating. It
Mm.
takes that rewiring of the brain from all the programming that we've had from growing up, whether it's from family, it's from public school, it's from TV, whatever it's from. Um, Once you strip that away, you could see that. And then you can find an easier time living that attitude of gratitude, regardless of the circumstances outside yourself.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, so I think this is a good jumping off point for the first annotation here. Know the advantages of being forward and active. That's that masculine principle. But keep to the principle of quietude and tranquility. There's the feminine. We need both yin and yang to be truly complete. The watercourse of the world is a converging point, the nexus for the exchange of energy among people. To play this role, we need to know not only the importance of being dynamic and proactive, but also how to handle people with courtesy and diplomacy. So again, I feel like that just lends more to this idea of being both forward and active and still quiet and tranquil, right? We can move forward without creating more resistance for ourselves. The state of the infant refers to the purity and simplicity of nature. We all manifested this state effortlessly when we were little, but the older we get, the further we stray from it. So, this to me was an indication of pure intentions. I feel like, in at least in my understanding of that, return to the state of the infant, this idea of being pure and simple. A lot of people that with age will begin to do things with an underlying motivation or an ulterior motive. If I do this, even if it's something good and altruistic for someone else, perhaps maybe they'll get something in return. Now, maybe nothing. Not everyone operates this way, but many people can tend to, do something kind for someone else because they are expecting something in return. So I think it's important for us to always be aware of where our intentions lie. If we are wanting someone else to change, or if we're wanting someone else to do something for us, or whatever the case may be, what are our intentions? Are we just doing something out of the goodness of our hearts, or do we have some ulterior motive, right? Um, Number 4. In this context, white means being highly visible, and black means being subtle. Sages understood the appropriate use of both. So again, learn when to move and when to be still. Learn when to be loud and when to be quiet. Right? And do it from a place of pure intentions. That's that middle point, that balancer. Number 5, to be boundless means being able to move and act without being bound by limitations. Because we do not seek the limelight, we remain unknown while doing our work. Our anonymity lets us go where we are needed and do what needs to be done. This would not be the case if we drew attention to ourselves. One consequence of fame is the severe restriction in one's ability to go anywhere or do anything. So it was interesting that we were talking about limitations earlier, and limitations or restrictions we put on our own selves and our own ability to be authentic. Maybe because we want to retain anonymity at this point, because this is a very different era. That the Tao Te Ching was written was very different than where we're at now. Now it's almost like you have no other choice but to have some sort of presence in the world if you're planning on doing anything of any value. Now that doesn't mean that you can't, fly to Africa and dig wells and never have anyone know your name and never have that on social media or something like that. But at least in terms of what Katie and I are trying to do, it's challenging for us to just drop things and go whenever, wherever we're needed because we're moms. So what can we do? We can do that from the comfort of our homes on social media, but then that brings in a lack of anonymity. So how do you guys feel about this? Do you feel like that is a limitation, knowing that you now have this social media presence. I feel like a lot of people who end up in the spotlight, YouTube famous or whatever, end up realizing that they need to be really careful with what they say and do. So that sounds like that's a limitation.
I would agree, to be honest with you, because well, for for an example, Barbara O'Neill,
Mm-hmm.
she was helping people. She wasn't doing it to be seen or heard. She was doing it to help people. However, she was silenced, like many who do try to do that are, because she was helping people.
Yeah.
So online, when it comes to presence online, I know we're peanuts in comparison to Barbara O'Neill, but it shows that it does matter, unfortunately. And not for nothing, there are times that like trying to help people online is wonderful,
Mm-hmm.
and helping people in person, but technology can be very overwhelming, and I feel limiting, yes, in and of itself.
That's true too. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of times with the technology and the lack of anonymity, now brings up a mind of fear. You're
Mm-hmm.
fearful of what you will say. You're fearful of how you will be viewed. You're fearful that people won't get the content that you're trying to put out there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's putting you in a limit state because of fear. I think one example, Marley, with her energy forecast,
Mm-hmm.
she is very open with speaking about the algorithms and how they are silencing this information from getting out. Yes, it might knock her down a few pegs and you might have to scroll down to find her videos, but it is legit content and she is speaking truth.
Mm-hmm.
She is speaking truth for the world to hear. And I think, as far as being careful as to what you're going to say on the internet, there's loopholes for everything, like the disclaimer that you put at the beginning of this video.
Mm-hmm.
There's ways of working around it.
Yeah.
You are smart, and what needs to get out will get out, you know?
Yeah.
I completely agree there. There
Yeah.
are loopholes and there are ways around it. And there are still people who say, hey, if you're worried about that happening all the time, and we know that like attracts like and energy goes where our thoughts flow, then maybe we're attracting more of that to us.
Yeah.
If we're
Yeah.
like, oh, it's going to be taken down because I said such and such. Well, maybe that's flagging you more.
Oh, that's true.
Not saying you specifically, I'm just saying in general from what we've learned about universal laws.
Yeah.
Perhaps that draws more attention to you to be flagged.
I'm
But
sure
there are loopholes. Go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just going to agree with you that I'm sure that does cause more attention to your channel if you're speaking truth about the algorithms and,
Mm-hmm.
what's being censored out, because they want to try to stop the truth before it gets too far.
Yeah.
So of course it's going to bring more attention, but I think it's semantics. Let's take a lesson from politics here. It's all about how you say things and
Mm-hmm.
what words you use. So there's definitely loopholes.
Yeah.
And the tone you use at the end.
Yeah, whether you go up in pitch or down in pitch makes a difference.
We
All
know what
right.
we want and we're getting our truth out there.
That's right. That's right. All right. Annotation number 6. We know what it is like to be highly regarded, but we hold to the principle of humility. We see ourselves as being with the common people, not above them. We become the valley to the world. We are open and receptive to the many diverse perspectives that people have. Interesting, but agreed. And then finally, number 7. I translate Peu, the most important character in this line, as plain wood. It is often mistranslated as uncarved block. Peu represents simplicity, plainness, and potentialities, because a plain piece of wood has the potential to be carved into many different things. Okay. Oops, it moved me. There we go. Okay. So let's read over here. Those who know both their masculine and their feminine sides become fruitful like the valleys of earth. Being like the valleys of earth, their vitality will not desert them. They will remain energetic as children. Those who know both their strengths and their limits become models worth following. Being worthy models, their vitality will not fail them. They will radiate simplicity. Radiating simplicity, wise rulers inspire others to follow their path. Such is the making of a great administration. Okay. So know your own strengths and limitations. That's part of knowing yourself, right? And then I love this. Know the personal, yet keep to the impersonal. Accept the world as it is. No judgment, just as it is. I did want to ask you though, this part right here. Know the male, yet keep to the female. Receive the world in your arms. If you receive the world, the Tao will never leave you and you will be like a little child. So, my question was, how does this either align with or contradict the Christian teaching of being in the world but not of it? Do you think that this is contradictory?
I feel like it's completely opposite.
You think so? Yeah.
The way that I'm taking it,
Yeah.
it's the Christian way of being in the world but not of the world is dividing. It's dividing you
Mm,
from the world. And
very
I think that's
true.
where Jesus was not okay with religious beliefs as such, you know?
Yeah. Agreed.
I mean,
Very.
Jesus didn't say that, did he? I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. That was a Pauline teaching. Yeah, it came from, no surprise, Paul.
Good old Paul.
Oh, Paul. Silly, silly
Uh,
Paul. Hold
Yeah, like I said, I follow the red letters.
on.
you don't see that much in the newer Bibles. I remember
Yeah.
seeing it honestly when I was younger. My family, I think I must have had four little or precious moment Bibles.
Mm.
And those had red letters in it. But, come to think of it, all the Bibles I own now, they don't have any red letters. Is
I
that
think the
something you have to
lines,
purposely seek?
I think the lines have just gotten so blurred at this point,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay. Hold on. Do not. So in First John 2:15, do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. Now this was First John. This was not John. So this wouldn't necessarily have been Christ speaking. Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them.
Where does Mother Nature fall within that, though?
Well, that would be the world itself. Although technically, if you look up the etymology of the word world, it means like all of humanity.
Okay.
I feel like maybe if they were trying to say, don't love like your wants and whatnot of this world, like don't love what you want over your God.
The material realm.
Right. I
Yeah.
could see that.
Weird though that the word world means all of humanity though. Right? Like when you hear the word world, what do you think of? You think of like the earth, right?
Yep, Mother Earth, all encompassing and everything on it and within it.
See,
which we
I
don't even.
don't. Maybe this is the self-centered part of me, but when I think of world, I think of my reality.
Interesting. Well, you both would be incorrect. According to Etymology Online, it is human existence, the affairs of life, also a long period of time, also the human race, mankind, humanity.
That's
That's
very interesting to go
Mhm,
along with what we were already talking about.
mhm, mhm. So this one down here, it says life on Earth. The known world, the physical world in the broadest sense, the universe. In the Gothic, let's see, Greek cosmos. Rendered in Gothic is Manaseps, literally
So
seed of man.
I'm kind of confused here because I feel like I was told to love my neighbor like myself. I could be wrong. I don't know.
See how the problem with translation gets a little muddy, So hold on. So let me see if I can pull this up in a different translation, see what it says here. Um, okay. Do not love the world or anything in the world. So right now I'm looking at it in the new international version on my computer. And it's not wanting to switch it. There we go. So let me look at the King James version just for comparison. Where'd it go? There we go. So this is slightly different, but it still uses the word world. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. So let's take a quick detour, okay? And we're gonna go to First John 2. Concordance for this. Love not the world. So in this instance, well, that's even weirder. An apt and harmonious arrangement or constitution, order, or government, ornament, decoration, adornment, the arrangement of the stars, the heavenly hosts as the ornament of the heavens, the world, the universe, the circle of the earth, the inhabitants of the earth, the ungodly multitude, world affairs, circle of earthly goods, aggregate or general collection of particulars of any sort. So basically, anything material, anything. Okay. So just something to sit with. Um, being in the world, but not of the world. I get the idea of not wanting to love the things of the world, right? Because it's not money that's the root of all evil, but it's the love of money that's the root of all evil. So the love of possessions would probably be pretty similar. And the more that we love things, the less we seem to love people because they threaten those things. You know what I mean? So just some things to think about here. And I believe that's it. Yeah, that is all. Any thoughts, any questions, any comments on this or any of the other chapters that we've read today?
Well, I was just thinking when it comes to, because you already know my situation, when it comes to like addiction and escapism, it's just interesting that it's used to escape this world, but it is of this world.
Yeah, well, It's kind of like a double-edged sword then. It's the serpent eating its own tail.
Oh, yeah.
I think,
Boy.
and that's how we end up in these vicious cycles, these patterns of addiction, abuse, neglect, self-loathing. All of it comes from this, you know, disconnection, for one, from the Tao, from God, from spirit, whatever you want to call that. And then disconnection with one another. It's very frustrating.
Connection of this world, or then it is not of this world because we're looking for soul connections, which technically are not of this world. We're in a
True.
body.
Yeah, true. It's a lot to unpack. It is.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's a lot to unpack. Okay. Excuse me. Well, that is all for this week. Unless there's anything else you ladies would like to add, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And then we can go to our prayer time. Okay.